Hey, you all, welcome back to the Aisle. Iron Sharpens, Life Encourages. We're in season 2, episode 2. My name is Blake Evans. We're here with my co-host, Dewan Knight.
What up?
We are so fortunate. We told you guys we'd have some more people visiting again for season 2. Sow some wisdom on us. And like the wisdom person today is Jeremiah Carlton. No other than Jeremiah Carlton. Welcome to the show.
The applause.
Really applause. Right. Just couldn't get enough. Came back for another season. So we're truly fortunate to have him here. We'll get to some really good episodes.
Yeah.
So what you got for us today, Jeremiah?
You know, being called a wisdom person, that's a pretty good title.
It's there, you know?
We're going to put that right across the bottom of your
right.
face. Wisdom.
We'll have t-shirts.
Gonna have a little light coming out.
Just edit it over my chest.
Yes.
Well, so I'm Jeremiah Carlton, and I currently go to school at Trevecca.
Yes.
I am the chaplain there for the school when it comes to the student body, and just the whole past few years of God bringing me to Trevecca has been a miracle, and how He did that process, especially me transitioning out of high school. But I just have known, and I still say, like, I know I'm supposed to be there. Yeah. And one of the first things that I think about me going to Trevecca was, even though it was a Nazarene school, I didn't really know what to expect from a Nazarene school. I mean,
I know what to expect from Jesus.
Yeah. Dr. Mike Courtney, Dr. Mike Courtney went there, so he's a genius. I was like, it's probably great.
Speaking of wisdom,
I'm bound to learn something.
Yeah,
exactly.
But just early on, even with like the simpler classes I had, I knew that the Holy Spirit was in what we were learning.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And what I've really been reflecting on just the past year or so has been the revelation that I've been getting from these classes. And a lot of that has to do with me just looking back to our tradition of the AG Church and taking the things that I've learned from this Nazarene school, but also just what they are teaching me about the global church and about history and just about God and Himself. With theology, like those things brought across, even though there is differences in slight things. But we're also very close to what the Nazarenes believe.
Very much so.
But one of the main big thing that I want to talk about today is like in how we can better integrate history of the church and just like the knowledge of theology in the church to the church, to the lay people, to the students. Because in my personal experience, I feel like as a student, there was a lot of things about the global church and the history of the church now that I know, but I had no idea was even a thing.
Right.
Yeah. And I think we shy away from that, because it can be like traditionalism, or it just may not seem the most exciting at times to students. And it also has to do with our form of how we just like, we choose to educate and how we choose to do church. Like sometimes we feel like that's the stuff that doesn't really grab like youth or college ministry or just people in general. Yeah.
Giving them like attention, like them college nights. Hey, history of church 101, come out. Like
5 people there.
Five people with glasses, like, this is interesting.
Tell me.
But there are so many cool stories and so many lessons and just good or bad about the church, of what has happened over the history, what happens after the Bible. Like, I think mainly like the whole history of pretty much the Bible until now, I had no idea with the church until I got to college. And I've just noticed there is a lack in somewhere. It's a way that we could do better in our tradition and just in our communities. Just because I think God is in both.
Yes.
And
100%.
God definitely speaks through both. And I think He's also called me to help play a part in that, in sharing that.
I think a lot of it is because we're in such a consumer-based world now.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking for things that like, okay, well, how can I quickly satisfy them?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, because everybody's like, well, I've heard that before. I don't want to hear that again. Like, but are you doing that?
Yeah.
Like, I know he preached that same message last year, but are you using it?
Yeah.
And have you been using it since last year? And if not, guess what? We're back to it.
Yeah.
All over again.
Yeah.
And like thinking about church history, we need to understand there are things like even when we read the word, man, there are things the Lord is trying to show us and teach us in all of that.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is, hey, you guys are pretty flawed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things I have to rebuild because of choices you guys are making.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if
They're
we
the same
honor,
choices back then.
right, if they're making the same mistakes, like if we honor the history of it and we see, okay, man, like I think a lot of times people look at the mistakes over the generations through the church and like, well, we don't ever want to do that again. But you're literally doing the same thing, just a different cover is on it.
Mm-hmm.
You're making the same mistake, like getting to the root of why did they mess up?
Yeah.
Why was this wrong? Why was this an error?
Yeah.
And then learning from that portion of it.
Yeah.
Right? But if you just skip over the whole thing, like, oh, we don't want to talk about it, it's like you're blackballing history.
Yeah.
Right? And it's just like, but you need to learn from it when you get down to it. So,
yeah. I'll go on a little bunny trail. When I was in youth group, I was fortunate to, our youth pastor at the time, he had us do a study on, well, we did a study together as a youth group on Jehovah's Witness and then LDS Church, the Latter-day Saints. Yeah. And the premise being, like, why aren't we the ones out knocking on doors? We claim to have the truth, but we don't give out pamphlets. We're not going door to door like they are. And, doing this whole thing. So why don't we do that? We're not confident enough in our faith. We don't know enough history about like why Christianity is what it is. Why is it the truth historically? So we have like a guy that was ex Jehovah's Witness come in and teach us about Jehovah's Witness faith, which was awesome. We learned a lot about the LDS Church and stuff and what they purport and what they believe. But it's all there. They pride themselves on the history that they have. Yeah. Joseph Smith and like the tablets and Jehovah's Witnesses and their like board of it. They have pride in their history. That's what they're teaching you is a history of like, their church and how you can get to know God through that. So it's like, why aren't Christians doing that? Do we not feel comfortable enough with our history, like what we're saying, or do we just like, where we sold something that was kind of like consumerism, like at the time, like did you just buy into the consumerism of Christianity? So I think it's like kind of going with that thing, like you kind of like sell the church as what you need it to be to draw people in, and then we kind of work like backwards, I guess, a little bit. Like the history will come, but I think it is important to have the historical. The history makes it, right, and it can keep out the consumerism a lot of the times. It can kind of focus on remembering what God did in the history, like remembering who He was to people. It makes a lot of sense.
You said something very important there. You said, "Do we value it enough?" That's the question.
Yeah.
Are we valuing what we're receiving?
Yeah.
At a level of, man, I must pass this on to somebody else.
Yeah.
Or is it just like, oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard this. I've listened to this. I've received this.
Yeah.
But for me, the value comes in when you allow that thing to work.
Correct.
Right? When you put the work in and you allow it to work. And you're not just hearing it. Right? He says to not just be hearers of the word, but to be doers. Yeah. And a lot of times we're just hearing. Yeah. And there's no doing. Correct. And so I don't see the value in it.
Yeah. Because history doesn't change, so people get bored quickly. You're always looking for that new.
Absolutely.
The nuance, I guess. But yeah, history's the same. It's the same, but if you forget about it and don't study it and don't remember it, kind of like what you're talking about, you miss out on key things and kind of the wayside. So.
And I'll say, like, I think really the heart of this and where this came up in my life is not only just me going to school, but I think I started to realize towards the end of like me being in the youth group, I started having these big questions.
Right.
And me even going to camp and interning at Camp Jackson for 2 years so far. Like, I have these questions of just like, well, we know these things. We know these things of God. We know we've heard them for a long time, but there is what does that even mean? Like, if I ask a student what that really means, are they going to be able to really explain that to me? Probably. Sometimes I feel like in some ways, no. Or how can they explain their experience in that way?
Right.
Because I will say, even, like, one thing I love about the AG is, like, it's very experiential in how we experience God. And that can kind of get a bad rap at times. Yeah. But also, like, when it comes to theology and, like, Trinitarian theology, it's very experiential. Like when Jesus died, this God, the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, was opened up. and we are brought into that. And that is us coming into that experience of Christ and God in its fullness. But like getting to the heart of like, what does that even mean? And why do we do these things? Like those have been questions that I really do think the Lord has put on my heart to be able to try and explain more.
Yeah.
And this is just kind of a short side story, but recently in a chapel at Tribeca, I was asked to just like do a closing prayer.
Right.
And I did the closing prayer and it went fine and good. But a friend of mine who was in class with me, she came up to me and she just kind of had like tears in her eyes. And she really encouraged me and spoke to that. What she said was, I know like you have been going through a lot, and I just felt the Lord like, because my father passed this past year, and that's been like I could talk all about that and just like what the Lord's been working with me in that and the struggles of that.
Yeah.
But she was like, I know you've been going through a lot, but I just really felt that the Lord wanted me to tell you that like that the Lord loves you so much. Like I see His special love for you. But also she was like, I know there's questions that you have been asking.
Yeah.
And you need to keep asking them.
Yeah.
God wants you in that.
Yeah.
And that was a big reassurance when it comes to this exploration of like history. And it's like, why do we do what we do? And like how can we grow in our denomination that way? And just
I
as
feel
a
like historically Pentecostal background, you don't ask questions. You kind of like you don't question God because your faith isn't questioned. You question God, right? So it's one of those things where you need to ask questions. But asking God questions makes your faith personal.
Yes.
A good resource for the listeners and for y'all is recently I've been researching. I'm in a history of the Nazarene Church class right now, but I'm kind of doing a directed study where I'm just gonna like research more on the AG Church. But there's a website called and a little extra on the side. But there's a website and a place, and I'm pretty sure it's in Kansas City, called the Flower like Pentecostal Heritage Center. And what's amazing about this place is it is the way my professor describes it, and he is like the historian of the Church of the Nazarene, really good guy, and really like top of his field. But the way he describes it is like that is the model for how we should do history, and knowing that too, that like our denomination did that is really cool. But it's an amazing resource that has like daily news of like what has happened through our denomination in this week over the years. It has a ton of readings, but it's very honest.
Right.
It's very honest about how things have happened, about where people have made mistakes, and honestly, it's funny because a lot of the AG churches over the history is a lot of people who were kind of AG, but not really, but they were Pentecostal, you know.
Yeah, we're in here somewhere.
Okay,
make room for us.
Yeah. But really, the main reason for reference of that and the history, it's not just about the history.
Right.
I think the biggest lesson I've learned so far, and all of the things I've been learning, is how important it is for us as the people of God to be pulled into the story.
Yes.
And I think it's very easy for us to get disconnected or really lost from the story. If you look at the Bible, like the Israelites, there are so many times where they just have to remember those who came before them, remember their descendants, like be pulled into the story of the people of God. And there's so much reference to that. And I think there is a lot of times where we have this Christianity in front of us today. Yeah. We have this maybe methodology of like doing things, but we forget like what came before. So what's the big story that we are really a part of? Yeah. Like we are a part. We're not just a part of our local church.
Right.
Yeah, we are. But we're also part of a larger denomination and just a faith that spans across the whole.
Yeah, this came out in our men's group on Thursday. I think you said it. It's like if you're not doing your part in the Big C church, someone's dragging you.
Yes.
Someone's dragging you.
Yep.
You have to like, no, but I think the history gives you that. You have to remember your why. We say in education, remember your why.
Yes.
History is that.
Right. Yeah. And I think from experiences that I have had and have seen, people are spending a lot of time focused on writing their story.
Man.
And they are separating that from his story. which is all of us, right? And so, man, if I'm always on my thing, and it doesn't overlap with his thing, first of all, I'm out of purpose.
Mhm.
Because the purpose he puts in us is going to be connected to his thing,
Yeah.
Mhm.
right? And so many times, man, people got their own dreams and own things they're chasing. There's nothing wrong with that stuff. But if that's what you serve and that is what you are guided by,
Yeah.
you're writing your own story.
Yeah.
You're no longer going to God like, is this the job for me? Is this the church for me? Is this the relationship for me?
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
Is this the season I need to make a change and do something different? Like if you're not, like you said, asking those questions with God, you're writing your own story.
Yeah.
And you're losing that connection to the vine that we all
Yeah.
need.
Mhm.
And being part of that story, man, that's where my strength is.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if I'm out here writing my own story, I gotta come up with all of the answers myself.
Mhm.
Right?
Yeah.
But just like Dill talked about in his podcast, man, God weaved all of that together. And it's because he hung out with his purpose and his story and said, okay, Lord, knit me together
Mhm.
and put me in this thing that you're trying to put me in. But
Yeah.
so many times, man, we venture off and start writing our own chapters.
Yeah.
And I was like, I got a better story. If you just hang out with me,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and if you just learn about me,
That's a
because
function.
that's part of the history, learning about him. Like
Mhm.
history tells who he is. It's like we talk about, man, nature reveals his glory. So does history.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Of all the things he's weaved together, big things, small things, like why do we do this? Because it knits us together,
Mhm.
you know?
And that doesn't diminish. I would say like the fact that we refer back to the word to like get the heart of the problem. Like it does. They don't rub against each
No.
other. You know, like
No,
they
no.
work together in
Yeah.
a beautiful way. And yeah, I just think that's very important. Also, like to what you said, I think that speaks a lot to like the individualism that we have in
Yeah.
churches and just as people. Like we get so caught up in our own small stories that
Yes.
We don't even look to the greater story of what's happening.
Western culture.
It is very much
Very
a Western
individualism.
cultural thing. Yeah. I think that does play a role in like people who leave the church
Mhm.
because in the ways that we possibly like do things, if we fail to bring people really into the story of God,
Yeah.
like why would they stay? You
Right.
know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
like
How does this apply to me?
it's a powerful thing that we were made for community, and I think being connected with our ancestors in that way of the faith is
Yes.
extremely important.
Yes.
And each one of those stories, like, I want to share just one of them
Do it.
here in a minute.
Yeah.
Like, each one of those stories has such a profound thing, I would say, to speak to, like, when it comes to just developing our faith.
Mhm.
The oral tradition was something that was long lived throughout the Old Testament and still lives today, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And I think we kind of fail to do that
Mhm.
when it comes to modern day and our faith.
Yeah.
But if I could give an example for that, so like there was a story I read recently
Mhm.
in a book for my systematic theology class, and I love this story. I love it. It speaks to the creation narrative, and it speaks to the role of us and our identity of Christ and what it means to be fully human. That's really the main gist of the book, like our identity of Christ, and like it has to do with Christology and how like Christ sets what it means to be human and divine at the same time.
Right. Yes.
But there's a section in that book about being fully human and like how we interact with nature. So it tells a story of, I think it's Saint Francis of Assisi, who was an Italian monk in a city called like Gubbio or something.
Old Gubbio.
Old
Ain't
Gubbio.
been there in a while. Swing back by.
But so this story, pretty much this monk lives in this city,
Right.
and in this city, these people have kind of been terrorized by this wolf. This wolf would like attack people, would attack animals,
Oh wow.
and would just like everyone knew about this wolf.
Right.
But one of these days, like Francis of Assisi goes outside the city, and he goes and speaks to this wolf, and he literally like commands him in Jesus' name to stop,
Oh wow.
and talks to him and is like, "Hey,
Listen,
like,
bro.
you've been doing these things. You need to stop,
antics,
and we'll take you in.
Right.
So pretty much, the wolf stops, and he walks in with this wolf back into the city.
The people are freaking out.
And the people are all like, "What's going on?" But St. Francis, he kind of announces to everyone, like, we've gained like a friend,
Right.
and like he's not going to do this anymore.
Prove it.
Right.
So the
Bring out the chickens.
But the people, so they're like, okay, like kind of freaked out. But eventually, they really take in this. And this wolf, apparently, by the story, like, he would just go around the town and, like, he would go with the saint. And eventually, the saint dies. And this wolf, as he would go around the town, people would just, like, feed him and he would just hang out.
Right.
And he eventually became a reminder of the saint and all that he taught. So, like, as he would go around, even after the saint passed, people would feed this wolf, and he just became a part of the community. Well, what's interesting is that sounds like a fable.
Right.
It sounds like just a story. Well,
Gulliver's Tracks.
they found the wolf was buried in the church, where the place they would normally bury people.
Wow.
So it's like, it's a real historical thing, and they have historical findings of it.
That's wild.
And little things like that, like, even though it's an awesome story, not only do I think like it could be huge for how we do children's ministry, and how there's such an imagination and a way to look at life and the way we interact with nature. And
I see a whole action
with
this wolf.
It could be awesome.
Like, people come to raid the village.
Right.
Now the wolf is their friend. So he's like,
Mark
taking them out.
Mark Wahlberg's in it.
Yes.
The studio, I brought you Goldilocks.
Yes.
Thought it was fake.
But like, a story like that completely like changes your mind and how you think of how us as humans interact with nature and with creation.
And it reminds you that we are over this. Like, in the garden, he said, you're the steward of over all this.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like, a lot of times, now I love watching nature stuff. Me and my wife do.
Mm-hmm.
And you see people doing certain things, and you're like, that's really crazy. Why are you with the shark right now, like your homies? But the reality is, we're stewarding over all of that.
Mm-hmm.
And those people that walk in those giftings understand, like, no, we're all in this. There is a symbiotic relationship with all of this, right? And so you see people walking these things out and doing these things, and you're like, I mean, Steve Irwin, love that dude.
Yeah.
This dude talked to every animal, and you would swear they understood him, right? Except for that one that got him. But the devil was in that animal.
Right.
That's all I'm going to say. He had no faith whatsoever. But, man, you see stuff like that, and you're like, I mean, zookeepers, like, the hearts that zookeepers have for those animals, man, it is unreal. Like, we watch some of those things where it's behind the scenes, like, some of the things that they have to do to take care of those animals, keep them alive, like, I'd be like, just euthanize that joker. Just being honest, like, you're like, oh, I don't think he's going to make it.
Just
like,
from the fish, the one that he speaks to fish.
I speak to fish. The Lord has given me that gift, yes. But, man, the way that they care for the animals is just, it's phenomenal. But, yeah, it shows how we are connected with all of God's creation.
Yeah.
And if we understand that, and if we really walk in that, like he was with that wolf, like, I have authority here. Yeah. Even though it seems crazy to people, I have authority here. Because it says it right here in this book.
Yeah. And I will say, if you're ignoring history,
yes,
you don't walk.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And I think with that too, it's hard for us to imagine that in the world that we live in at times. But like, as Christians, like, it is our duty in a way to help people realize, like, the new reality that is here. Like, the big thing in the New Testament is that the kingdom of heaven is here. But it's also to come. And the way my professor described it, which I love, is like, it's like a train pulling into a train station. And you see the train, it's there, but it hasn't fully stopped yet. Yeah. And it's like this reality of heaven being here on earth. And just the whole concept of heaven, with God recreating, like, creation, of just bringing things back to as it should be. Yes. The lion will lay with the lamb, you know? Like, And having that imagination for our children and for the youth and just for the people of God, like it really does something to the community of like what can be possible.
Yes.
And I mean the prophets in the Bible, like I've recently been learning about the prophets, and my new understanding of them is it's less of just like they're these mystical people who just speak like these words of the Lord. And I definitely can see in our tradition sometimes that's what people are just striving to get to.
Yeah.
Like you just want this special revelation that God just gave you to speak.
Yeah.
But one thing the prophets were really doing and big about, not only were they speaking to powers, but they were speaking to these people to show them something that was already there that they couldn't really presently see.
Right.
And they were opening like those windows. It's because sometimes we just get so far off from what God intended things to be.
Yeah.
That's only what we can
Yeah.
even imagine or believe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Some of them prophets, like they even led with, "You've forgotten the one God. You've forgotten this. You've forgotten that. It's always been there. You've just forgotten it. So let me hear
Yeah.
put you on notice." No. So yeah.
No, that's very good. I think again, you talk about the history, right? I think some of the problem is we have forgotten how to believe in the Word.
Mm-hmm.
Like He's said all these things, He's put all these things in place, but it comes back to that action. Do I believe what He said?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do I believe He gave me authority over all these things, or is it, like you said before, or is it just a fable?
Yeah.
Like we've got to decide.
Yeah.
Do I think this is a fable, or I think this is real?
Yeah.
And if I think this is real, my actions have to start lining up with that. Like if I'm reading my Bible and I think, man, this is real. This is not just some made up thing. This is the power of God moving in people's lives and stories and situations.
Yeah.
And that if He's a God who is always the same,
Mm-hmm.
He can move in my life and in your life and in your life and in our situations and make things happen just like He did then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if you discount it as a fable, like, well, did a whale really eat him? Right?
Yeah.
Like, did he really slay that giant? Or did he just have a heart attack?
Yeah.
Like, just crazy things.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so when you start, like, I think it was Jason Dow last season, he described it as things just being a little off-white.
Mm-hmm.
So if our vision of God just gets a little bit off, man, we start having all these things of doubt slipping in, right? And then we're not standing firm on what He said. We're kind of like, I mean, kind of, yeah, but that's just kind of weird. Yeah, because He's not like us.
Yeah.
It's going to seem weird to other people, right?
Yeah.
Some of the things that we do and we say are going to seem weird because we're not the same.
Yeah.
When we allow Him to work in us and lead us, we're not the same. And so if you're dismissing the history of all those things, and not even biblical times, like it's not like God stopped working.
Yeah.
Just because we got to the New Testament.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, well, all right, well, God hasn't worked until He comes back. Like, He's doing stuff all the time. And He's moving all the time. And if we're not paying attention to that, and that those stories aren't getting passed and told, people start to lose the faith that the Lord is trying to build up.
Mm-hmm.
Like He's trying to stack it up for us, so the next generation has something higher to stand on. And the next generation, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So their launching point is higher and higher and higher if we're doing it right.
Mm-hmm.
But if we're not passing it on, if we're not saying it, we're not spreading it, everybody's launching from the bottom every single generation.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these things that, man, we're having to walk people through, they could have bypassed.
Yeah.
If we were correctly giving the history of the church, giving the history of our Father and what He's done and what He's capable of doing, and understanding how that works.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. We talked about asking those questions too, and hearing you talk about that. Something that just resonated in my heart was doubt unchecked leads to unbelief. So it's like you need to ask the questions, but of course with questions comes that doubt. Right? Maybe this is, maybe it isn't.
Right.
But without that check from like community, from the Holy Spirit, right? Because now I'm even like challenged to when I bring people to church, I'm not bringing them to even experience, like to like an experience. I'm bringing
Right.
them to experience how they're connected to the story.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's
So
good.
I really like that.
Yeah. That's good. Say that again. Doubt unchecked leads to
unbelief.
unbelief. That's a slogan.
It's another T-shirt. We're gonna
That's
have
another
merch.
T-shirt.
We're gonna merch the season.
That's a season 2 sweatshirt.
Man.
Those questions are good. We
Yeah.
need them, you know? And I think like there is a stigma of just like questioning God can be bad at times. But
Yeah.
you look at the story of Job, and it's like when I first read it, and I'm looking at his friends talking to him, I'm like, man, Job's tripping right now.
Tripping.
Like,
I was gonna kill him. No,
Yes.
obviously,
I was like,
it's
Job's
okay.
tripping out. His
It's
friends are
over.
right.
Yeah.
But then like reading deeper into it, understanding Job was right because it was prayerful. Like even his anger and his frustration and all his questions was still directed towards God.
Yes.
And that's
Yes.
it's very important for us to remember.
Yeah. He asked some hard questions.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I grew up in a Baptist church. You didn't question anything. You didn't even question the pastor. Like that was like, oh, you're possessed with a demon.
Yeah.
If you're questioning the pastor.
Man.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest with you, our pastor needed questioning a lot.
Yeah, it's the
Like,
present day. Some
yeah, like some of these people out here don't need to be shepherding because it's not okay.
But historically, we've looked
But
at it as like,
historically,
oh, I mean, his dad
yeah.
was a pastor. Let him just take over
Let
the
him
church
just do
without
it.
prayerfully considering who should
Yes.
be the
Yes.
who does the sheep who does the sheep need as a shepherd.
Exactly.
Like, oh, his dad was a pastor. Let us something. It's fine.
Yeah,
Correct.
it's not safe. It is not safe.
Right.
At all. To just be making crazy decisions without seeking the Father.
Yeah.
Right. Like we had some crazy things of deciding, well, who's going to be the pastor? Who's going to be the next pastor?
Yeah.
And like this, we bring in people and they preach a sermon and we vote. I'm like,
Yeah.
has anybody prayed about
Yeah.
anybody?
And being able to vote pastors out and stuff.
Yes. Oh,
It's
stuff,
wild, man. It's wild. That's like church politics. Like, what's going on here? What's happening?
Yeah. And those are the.
It can get sticky. Not saying that
Oh,
it's
yes.
wrong, but like
Yeah.
I feel like it's a man-made system that we try to spiritualize sometimes.
Yes.
If we're not careful, it's like,
Yeah.
God, has anybody prayed about this? Is anybody
Right.
like, no? Have we really sought the Lord in this as a church and as a community first before we just did this?
Yeah, you look at, you go back and look at history when it was done right. How did the Lord do it?
Yeah.
You know, you got to go back and read like
Yeah,
how were these things worked out in the past? When we read through the Word, it wasn't politics. There wasn't a vote. Like God said, this is the man. He's going to lead, and when he's done, this guy's going to lead. And taking that all the way down to our local church, and understanding if we're saying God is our Father, He is our leader, and we have to let Him make those choices.
Yeah.
Right? Instead of, oh, I like how he sounds, or he's got a fresh perspective. Okay, that's great. That's cute.
Yeah.
But did the Lord send him here?
Yeah.
Or is He saying somebody else needs to be here? Because the thing that we're so short-sighted, like we think, man, we got to a good place. We're going to stay in this good place forever. Only the Lord knows what's to come.
Yeah.
And He knows what we're going to need as a church leader for wherever He's taking us.
Yeah.
Right? But we're like, oh, well, this is good, so we'll take this guy.
Yeah.
This guy is not equipped for where your church is about to go.
Yeah.
And you see churches disappear. You see things fall off.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and man, it's just, we got to get back to understanding letting Him ordain things.
Yeah.
And when he's ordaining the order, man, it makes everything so much easier.
Yeah.
And historically, like the people of God in the Old Testament were ruled by prophets. The prophet was the man that God appointed. The people because everyone else had.
Yeah, those
we would look a lot better if we had a kingdom. That's what we want.
Yep.
And God told them, just give them what they want. That's what they want. It's fine.
Yep. And even in that situation, He said, all right, this is the guy.
Correct. And He laid out kingly requirements too that they would even venture off of those if you read through it.
Yep.
Like we want our story to be God's story so bad that sometimes we miss, like, we want to do a wrong thing but also keep up with the times. But then historically, like, what has God done?
Yeah.
And we forget those things whenever we try to like make our own thing, because it's not going to be the same.
One thing I'm curious from y'all about is when it comes to us being connected to the global church, like, what do you think our shortcomings are in that? Or like, I'm curious, like, do you know the church calendar, and like, possibly have you heard of like the councils of the church? Because that's one thing where it was brought to light to me of how huge they were.
Right.
And the fact that I had zero idea about them, I was
Right.
like, okay, like, that stinks, you know?
Yep.
Like, there's something very useful in knowing that, like, there is a calendar that, like, the church moves through where we celebrate these different parts of our faith. And that's just a way of pulling us into the story. Not that you have to follow that in every way, but, like, in being aware of that. Or the fact that, like, it's crazy to think that after the Bible ends in Revelation, does it ever really end? But, like, the church eventually, because of a lot of crazy stories and events that was happening at the time, but the church eventually meets together because they're like, okay, like, we're at this early stage of the church. We need to put together, like, what we believe,
Right.
pretty much, and we want to worship God with our words in a good way, in a faithful way. So, like, the Nicene Creed and, like, all these things were created. The Apostles' Creed, like, together they were really debated about by, like, the church,
Right.
like, pretty much the global church at the time. But, like, I know if I asked a youth student or maybe even someone in the church about that thing, it's just like, because, you know, why is it important?
Creed was a band.
I love Creed.
It's not the same thing.
Creed came in clutch for me. You know, back in the day.
Good bands.
It was a wonderful band. I love Creed.
Creed was killer.
But, like, those are kind of types of things, and, like, whenever I speak about this, talk about this, I don't want to sound like I'm just a college student who has come across this revelation.
Yeah.
But also, it is like, it makes me wonder about, like, how can we do things better?
Yeah.
Like, why don't people know about this? Why don't we teach this in church? Like, I know there is, like, that focus of, like, we'll just go to the scripture. We don't need to be talking about all these other things as much, and you can maybe do that in a separate environment. But I think they work together.
Yeah.
I think, like, when it comes to just our story of the people of God, like, those things, like, a lot of times we like to tell personal stories so much when we're preaching, when there are, I think, sometimes more constructive stories like that. Don't get me wrong, personal stories are very important, and the Lord speaks to us in that. But I will say, like, I see the power of sharing those things with people, and it makes them feel more connected to what's actually, like, happening in the world.
I feel like historically together but separate has never worked. It's Black History Month. So it's never worked. But I feel like one thing I really enjoyed with my college experience at MTSU, getting plugged into Chi Alpha, we would do, like, a lot of collaborations with other college ministries, with the Catholic ministry, with the BCM, with there was another big one on campus. But anyway, we would move in freshmen to their dorm rooms. But essentially it turned into, like, me being the left man for, like, my college pastor, and then the college pastor of the Baptist ministry. He had, like, a girl that kind of, like, did the same thing I did for, like, our college pastor. We got super close, so we would have conversations on, like, the Baptist faith versus, like, what Pentecostals believe, that kind of thing.
Gotcha.
So it's one of those things where it's like those collaborative events where we come together, being the hands and feet of God. Like, it's not about our differences; it's about the New Testament church showing the example of who Christ is by helping the community. I feel like that kind of stuff. We do a lot of stuff with our church, like church events and stuff. But I think the merge, and even when we did, like, when you're in youth group, we would merge with, like, the Baptist church down the road and have a service. That kind of stuff is powerful. It kind of gives you that nuance to where, like, they see the freedom in worship that may not always be there in the Baptist. It may be a little bit cloaked with the Baptist worship, but they see Pentecostal worship, like, and see, like, this isn't just for show. This can be very, like, intentional. This can be very, very useful. That kind of thing. But then it also opens up the stage for Holy Spirit to, like, be like, these are the hands and feet. The body has different parts, right? But you guys, doesn't mean you have to be separate. You're working together. And this is what it looks like. So I feel like that's kind of where I would love to see that more, just like more collaborative events, cross denominational events.
Yeah, and like with me, like studying at another denomination, and like all the things that I'm taking in, just educationally and like spiritually, I think it's so important, like of how I bring that back.
Yeah.
And when I go to these camps that I work at, when I come back, when I possibly pastor one day, like I really have to think about the question: what type of church am I gonna have? How are we gonna do things?
Yeah.
How is preaching gonna be done? How are the people really gonna be brought into that community of God? I mean, I think of you see that new Bonhoeffer movie came out a little bit ago. Bonhoeffer was like a theologian, but pretty much he was German, and he was studying in other places. He was a genius. He got like 2 doctorates by the time he was like 25. But it was during the time of the Nazi like regime.
Yeah.
And he went back. Like he caught like the last boat or last flight to go back to be with his people, because he was like, I have to be able to be in that situation with the things that he knows to speak to them. Because at that time, the churches were all, the Nazi churches were all doing whatever. They just went with what was happening.
Yeah.
So, like, in thinking of our denomination and, like, the ways that we can improve, like, that is just a big point of, like, reflection for me.
Yeah.
And, like, how are we led by the Spirit? And I think of us as having radical faith on the boundaries of just the world, of really being able to make those hard decisions, but in faithfulness to the Lord.
Yeah.
But also, like, in that, how do we stay tied into the story to the point? Because we have a history of sometimes just ending up doing our own thing.
Yes.
Like, we just follow. I don't know. I guess we can possibly at times. I can't speak to every situation, but get so caught up in the spiritual aspect of things that we can just be pulled in different ways.
Yeah. And I think part of it, we get not even stuck in the spiritual aspect, stuck in the doing.
Yeah. Who
What
is
are we
it that
doing
said
in
you
our
can
church?
be so spiritually filled to where you're like physically no good or something, where you're like so overly spiritual people can relate to you?
Yeah,
or
you're
something
no
like that.
good
I
to
can't remember the
people.
exact saying.
Yeah.
You're no good to be somebody who said that.
I can't. I've heard it before. I know what you're talking
But
about. Yeah, I just feel like
earthly no good. It's like you're spiritually something
Yes.
or earthly no good.
you're
Something like that.
no good or something. We're close.
We'll Google
We're
it.
gonna find it. Somebody just put it in.
It'll come to me at night. I'm just like at
Yeah.
midnight, like wake up and wake me up. Oh, what's this?
I found it.
Yes.
I think we get caught in our agendas.
Yeah.
Like, we want to be good at this, or really good at this.
Yeah.
And that's fine. If that's the Lord, if that is what the Lord is calling us to do in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can recognize that when it's functioning in a healthy way. Like, when it's building people and discipling people and creating disciples, and those people are growing and developing into leaders, I think then you can model, you begin to see something that's modeling something healthy. Like we were talking about with our youth, and how those youth turn into young adults and they formed a community, and how those young adults turn into parents and they formed a community. Like, you see a system that is working and building and discipling and developing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes we're out here working stuff, and the Lord is like, can you just leave that alone? That's not for you.
Yeah.
You know? And we've mentioned before, like, the understanding and the need for unity. And understanding, like, what my church does is what my church does. That's our part of the body.
Yeah.
And what your church does and what they do is their part of the body. And instead of figuring out how we put all that together, we're too busy putting them down because they don't do what we do, and they're too busy putting us down because we don't do what they do, or we're not supposed to be.
Right.
You're 5 miles down the road. Why do all of us need to be doing the same thing, and you're 5 miles down the road? You need to be doing something amazing that God has ordained you to do.
Yeah.
And we need to be doing something amazing that God has ordained us to do.
Yeah.
And then we need to bring that stuff together in unity for the community. And then we can offer them something of value.
Yeah. My dad is like, what is his title? they call him head chancellor of his missionary Baptist church.
Right.
But they're really big about tithes. But it's one of the things where like he was asking me questions about how do you do online giving and stuff. It's like a small family church that my family has in Dixon. And he's like, how do you do that? So have you reached out to your other churches in the area? Like you literally were raised by a Baptist church down the road.
Right.
And I know that you guys aren't like not like they're missionary Baptists and it's like black church is just kind of like
Shade.
they're all charismatic, really.
Shade.
So it's kind of like even though you're missionary Baptist, you're kind of Pentecostal a little bit, but not whatever. But like the non-black, I guess, Baptist church down the road. So have you ever asked them, like the bigger churches, how they do online ministry and like how they do like Facebook streaming, that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
But it's like that culture of like, you know, my church is doing this, you guys do that. Well, we can't come together and even ask questions where it's like it's like not allowed or something. But I said, ask around. And like literally, I mean, I asked our associate pastor, and he like, so I said, we'll try these different things. But he did collaborate with some of the other churches in his area, and then they're working on events together and stuff too. But it's just that the body has different parts of it. We work together to like you can do that. It doesn't have to be this whole like thing where everyone's doing their own thing because that's dangerous. So.
I mean, the biggest part about division is just like not knowing, you know. And I think when it comes to like denominational like divides or just divides between churches and communities, like we don't understand each other.
Yeah, we don't understand history.
Yeah. And I think it's
we're missing the origin story.
Yeah. And I think sometimes when you look at the origin story, you see people aren't as crazy as you think they are. Yeah. Like a slight change in thought, you can kind of relate with and be like, I understand why they made that decision. But it leads a whole different way. Right. Like, I think it's very important for us as people and for the youth to go and to other churches, to learn and to be open and to experience that. And then it's not just the thing of like church shopping where you're just picking what you like and what you don't like.
Right.
But I think as Christians, it's more if we're just open to seeing God in these situations, in these places. Yeah. Like that's the thing that I love about that. Like, it's not me going there to judge necessarily. Yes, there are things that I see like maybe I wouldn't do that way or I don't like.
Just a little sketch.
But seeing but seeing like how God can be in those places too is really powerful. Yeah. Like when I think of the church, and there's a lot of debate on the church still today about like and having lots of money put towards art and stuff, like especially in Catholicism, like Orthodoxy, where there's so much money stored up in those things. But even though there's debate on that, I see that like they had purpose behind it, like an understanding, like, you know, like the glass windows, where they had the art and stuff, like that costs a lot of money for a church to make. And some people maybe today would be like, the church doesn't need to spend money on that. But when you really look back to history, a lot of times they did that because people they couldn't read or write, or even those who were deaf, and they couldn't hear the word, they could show it to them. So it played a role. And in understanding that, it's like, you know, it all kind of comes together in your mind, and you don't feel as divided from someone you don't know.
And let's cycle it back farther in history. Right?
Yeah.
Let's go all the way back to them building this temple in the wilderness. The finest stuff. The Lord didn't say, just bring me whatever you got. He said, bring me the nice linens, the nice threads, the gold, the silk. Right? He didn't say, bring me some aluminum or just whatever you guys got scrapped that you can melt together. Right? Like, even then, the Lord is like, bring me your best. He's setting a standard. Yeah. Like, don't give me some scraps or some leftovers. So it goes back to having the right perspective. Like, oh, well, why are they spending all that money on that? Or maybe it's they're bringing their best because they can. Right? Like, maybe your church can't. And that's okay. But what is the best thing your church can bring? Right. But don't be mad because the best thing they can bring is amazing and probably costs more than you're going to make in a lifetime. Yeah. But they're bringing their best. And that's the thing, historically, God has always asked from us. Bring me your best. Bring me your first. Right? Yeah. And so if it's wonderfully etched glass that costs lots of money, or if it's, man, we just installed an air conditioner in this church that's been running on fans
Yeah.
for decades.
Yeah.
You're bringing your best.
Yeah.
You know?
And when you can see that in different areas, you can see it's the same God, even though it's in different. We talked about the different spaces. So with me and my experience, like we grew up like Church of God in Christ. So I was at a church for when I got back into church my senior year of high school. My family had moved to Church of God, and we would just swear by Church of God's head, like, "Oh, no, how much she is the best, right?" When I got to college, I was going to Cal for a lot. It was pretty much like my primary place I would go.
Mm-hmm.
But my friend who did not grow up Pentecostal, we would go to like the Tuesday. It was called The Point at New Vision, their college ministry, and I literally like still experience Holy Spirit the same way there as I would in a Chi Alpha service.
Yeah.
But I learned, I was counseled that like you can't church hop like you were talking about. It's not consumer Christianity because you can't spiritually grow if you're going from this place to that place. So you need to have a source.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that you should shy away from like being open to visit to see how God is moving in other parts. And then that like. In that whole season of me being in college, going to different places and trying to get as much God as you could wherever he was what was pushed. So that thirst and that zeal for God. So like Kairos was the thing that happened. The Roddens, now Roddens. Emily and Randy, that's where they met.
Yeah.
Kairos, nice. They got married there, like a worship night. There was a thing called Sanctuary that they would do in Nashville on Thursday nights that people would go to whenever we have service. So you'd go, okay, Kyle for Wednesday, Sanctuary Thursday. Like you were just going to all these places to just get as much God as you could for the sole purpose of like not feeling like I'm stuck in this box to where I'm Pentecostal, so I can't go back. Or I can't go to this Baptist ministry because I have this other ministry that I'm doing, right? Have a source, but don't let that historically like don't think that your denomination is the best because you guys are just like historically that's like not true.
I mean, it's like if you think what you have is the best, it's probably just because you haven't also experienced or learned about other things.
Exactly. You don't know the history.
And on what you were saying about like bringing God your best, one thing that I think that reminded me of probably one of the biggest messages and practices that I've been doing in my life the past year or so. And this is credit to honestly just like reshaping my thinking from partly at times in my relationship with my girlfriend. And I've just seen it affect my ministry, but it is assuming the best out of people. Yeah. And that's a hard thing because it's like, we know that people are sinful. And we know that we don't always know their intentions. And there is, I think, an automatic defense mechanism that we have as people that is just like, our brain goes that they're doing something bad.
Or they want something.
Yeah, or they want something.
Yeah.
And that may be the case at times, but I think it's powerful in assuming the best regardless. And I think it is a huge part of being a Christian because we're not trying to do the defending, you know? Yeah. God fights that for us. And also if we keep that same posture of assuming the best, sometimes people can't see the best in themselves because they don't believe it. But if you believe that more in someone than they do, that is powerful.
Yeah.
And as Christians, like we believe that God calls them to be good, that they can reach holiness and sanctification.
Yes.
And being able to speak into that and believe that as just kind of an outset as a mind, I think people pick up on it.
Yeah.
Even if you're maybe not saying it, they pick up on it.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing as a Christian because we want to protect ourselves, we want to protect our families.
Right.
But if you really look at the story of Christianity, it's not always pretty. It's just about protection and easygoing. Like, as a Christian, we expect to be persecuted. Like we expect to endure things. We expect that things are going to come against us.
Yeah.
But that is why it's so amazing to be a Christian because we have the Lord. That we have a strength that is unlike any other. So to me, honestly, like seeing everything as bad in that way, or maybe assuming the worst, it's that defense mechanism. It's weakness because we're relying on ourselves. In ways, and when we rely on the Lord, I think it takes a big step of faith. For that because you have to kind of expect like People may betray you. People are
Yeah.
gonna hurt you.
Yeah.
Things are gonna happen, and no one just wants that.
No.
Right.
But it's a matter. It's almost kind of like a Christian pastoral burden in the way of like you're willing to carry that because you see something better in someone.
And whenever you know history, you know that every story comes from the story of creation or the story of like Jesus dying and like having that unconditional love for us. I even tell my kids at school all the time, I'm like, you can't give people something that you don't have.
Yes.
And whenever people come into your space, like say we have new students that start, like maybe they've only been treated with disdain and anger. And they only know how to give that to other people, right? But I said, if they're being rude and you're being rude, who's learning how to be kind?
Right.
Yeah. Right. It's always the same. No one? And it's like, no one. Exactly. Sometimes you have to be, or have the understanding, like, I'm going to be kind in spite of, because this person may only have been treated with unkindness before meeting. They have to see an example. They have to see that. So, but if you don't have like the knowledge of that, you can't give them that because you can't give them stuff that you don't have. So,
and it's interesting because like the church really thrives under persecution.
Yeah,
and I think especially in our modern day church here in the Western church, like we kind of want to put ourselves outside of that way of persecution.
Yeah,
we're just comfortable.
Struggle. That's
we don't want that. But like the martyrs of the church, the people
make everything.
Man, exactly.
But like, there's been so many people who have died for the faith, and those are like the seeds of the church. We could not have the church today without those people.
Yeah,
because those people. That's one thing that's really different, I would say, about Christianity and why like our tradition has lasted. Because in that time where Jesus was living, there were so many different movements and kind of like stories of messiahs coming. But ours has lasted, especially because of the martyrs of the church. Yeah. No matter how we've been persecuted, as Christians, like we have found ways to thrive and keep going, and we have found that it's worth it because the Lord is true and He's real and He takes care of us
over and over and over.
Yeah,
it's good. I think on the lines of understanding and on the lines of essentially just compassion, like seeing the best in people. Like my wife is very good at that. Like this person is shady.
Women help us, man.
This person is shady. She's like, I kind of, okay, I will trust your judgment in this, right? Women are very good at that, at seeing the good in people. And until I started to develop that point, it was really just annoying.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just being honest. Like, why are you trusting this person?
Yeah.
And, the Lord changed my heart, changed my perspective on things. And, like, as a man, like, taking care of my family, I'm like, no, we're keeping everything out.
Yeah.
Because I don't trust them to not hurt my family. I don't trust them to not bring something toxic into my family space. But what I later understood was that sheltering of that space was creating a toxic environment within the space. Because there was no fresh air coming in. There was no fresh perspective coming in. It was just, well, we're just going to shield this, right? And so as I matured in my faith and my understanding, I'm like, okay, this does not work.
Yeah.
Like we got to be in spaces. We got to give the kids room to operate and to breathe and move,
to be persecuted,
to
feel uncomfortable,
right, and to succeed and to fail, and all of those things. But I think a lot of that came from the church that I grew up in.
Yeah.
Well, you need to control the environment. You need to control everything. Instead of understanding, I don't have any control.
Yeah.
And just trusting God.
Yeah.
Like when it's good, when it's bad, trusting God.
Yeah.
And having that understanding of, okay, you got this. Really, I'm just a tool in your hand. Then it frees us as His children to really begin to operate the way He designed us to operate.
Yeah.
So I'm not like trying to be this security blanket or this shield to protect all these things from ever getting in. It's like,
the Lord is that. The Lord is that.
The Lord is that. My job is to be obedient to whatever He's asking me to do, whether that's being a better dad, being a better husband, being a better friend, being a better leader, being a better employee, whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know? And so getting to that place of understanding, like, man, this is not about me.
Right.
This is not about all these things that I think it's about.
Yeah.
It's about the kingdom.
Yeah.
It's about him and his will and what he's put in the next person.
Yeah. In the counseling world, we call that I statements. I don't trust this. I don't trust that. I don't trust that. But the Lord saying, do you trust me?
Yes.
Right. We don't hear that whenever we're just in our head with our I statements all the time. So.
I mean, Dylan, he brought up Jeremiah 17:7. And that's a verse, like, blessed is the one who trusts in the Lord. That's a verse that is so simple. And it's hard for me to really preach about it and talk about it just because it's like, you're just going to tell someone to trust in the Lord. Yeah. But I will say, like, my life is a complete testament of that. Yeah. Like, I've gotten where I am now just by trusting the Lord. Yeah. And at times, like, I know it really looked crazy. Like, I just wasn't stressing in certain moments. Like, I was coming up towards the end of high school, and I didn't know what I was doing, man. I was like, I'll just go to, I might go to NTSU as a default because it's close. But I knew, like, the Lord wanted me to go into ministry and pursue that. And I was just like, Lord, like, I really searched my heart. And I was just like, Lord, I trust you with this. And then I didn't worry about it after. Yeah. And things worked out. But that verse means so much to me because I really have seen the power of just trusting in God. And I think God really sees that and really honors that and respects that and shows you that if you trust in him, he'll take care of you.
Yeah. And historically, he's proven that.
So over and over. And trust is an action.
Yeah.
It's not just well, that's a good statement. No, it's an action.
Yeah.
Like, we went on this journey last year of the Lord's just like, do you trust me? Do you trust me? Yeah. Not knowing what was to come. Yeah. Not knowing, like, I need you to sell your house. Yeah. I need you to do this.
Then it's like, oh, do you really trust me?
Yeah. Then it's like, you know all those times we've been talking about trust and those verses of trust that you put up? Yeah. Now we're about to use it. Now it's about to be in action.
But now look at this amazing new space we got.
Now we're in another space. You can't even see it because of the brick wall that I built.
By hand.
Solid brick wall.
Solid bricks.
No question. Just trust us.
Trust. It's a solid trust. It's a support wall. But yeah, man, it's trust is an action. Yeah. And it's not just this statement, like, you see it on t-shirts, you see people like you say, like, how do you preach on that? It's not really a thing that you can give to people. It's, we talked about experience. It's one of those things you have to experience and develop. Like, God's going to ask you to do small things early, and then he's going to keep stacking that. Yeah, I know this was easy for you, but now we're going up here. Yeah. And you get that experience of learning to trust him as you go through, right? Yeah. So it's all of that, man. It's understanding, it's experience, it's trust, it's all that stuff put together.
I think we really have to look at ourselves as people and think, like, if what in our life would we not maybe be comfortable with God taking away, or we don't trust God with? Yeah. Like, with everything. And that's something that I still work on, but, like, I've seen how when I'm holding on to things and I know that's not for me. Yeah. But I'm holding on to them. If I let go, like, I've seen how the Lord has blessed me. Yeah. But also, like, it's so hard sometimes seeing other people who are holding on to those things and, like, they don't. If you ask them that question, they're like, I really don't know. Like, I don't know if the Lord, like, I'll kind of ask, like, if the Lord told you to do this, drop everything, right, and go and do it, what are you going to do? Yeah. And, sometimes our honest response is, I don't know if I do it. Yeah. And I think that's something we have to pray about and really seek in ourselves, because I would say pretty confidently, like, of course I struggle when the Lord asks me to do hard things, but I know, and I've made these decisions in my life where I know, like, I may not want to do that, but I know the Lord's leading me there. So regardless of what happens, like, I just try to relinquish control. Yeah. Regardless of what happens, I trust God. I trust that he's going to work it out. And I'm not going to worry. Absolutely. I mean, the Bible says, do not worry, do not fear. I think do not fear is one of the most common phrases in the Bible. And it's like, we let ourselves get ridden with fear.
Yes.
When it comes to trusting the Lord.
Yeah.
But that also comes down to just like, do you really know the Lord?
Yeah.
And do you know what He's like?
Yeah.
And as you understand who God really is.
And the history.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
what He's done.
And he puts those things
Yeah.
together. He knows that fear and worry come in tandem.
Yeah.
Experience both at the same time. And it's hard for your body to hold one emotion, but to juggle more than one, you're
Chaos.
You, as the kids say, crash out.
Yes.
You can crash out trying to
Yes.
like juggle what you've got going on, but also trying to like hold on
Yeah.
to what he's saying or trying to get that courage to like be bold
Yeah.
to do that. So
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
instead of crash out, I like to say tweaking.
tweaking, crashing out. Crashing out is I literally feel crashing out. I'm crashing out. I tell my kids that all the time I'm crashing out.
I'll say
Mr.
that.
Evans, you good? I'm crashing out.
Crashing out.
Crashing out.
I'll tell my friends I'm literally
Tweaking.
okay.
It's all coming apart. One wheel at a time.
Mm.
Well, man, this has been good, bro.
It's been
Yeah,
really good,
man.
Jeremiah.
Thank y'all for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you were able to come back. You're one of the people I enjoy having conversations with.
Yeah.
Because you're open to the perspective of maybe I've been seeing this wrong all this time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that opens a space to have conversations of, okay, well, I can understand that, and here's my view.
Mm-hmm.
And when we have differences, it doesn't affect who we are, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't affect our relationship or our friendship or anything of that nature, right? And so
It's so important for
it
present
is,
day right now.
yes,
Yeah.
we got to learn how to have conversations with each other,
Yeah.
and not be offended, not be angry, not dismiss, but being open to understanding.
Yeah.
You know,
And you're in that season where you're in the college season where it's like questions are okay. Like
Yes.
they teach us before I came to MTSU or youth pastor being like, everything you guys have learned, you're about to have some questions. You'll have people asking you questions about
Yeah.
why you are the way you are and what you
yes,
believe, that kind of
yes,
stuff.
and
So,
yes.
but I think it's important to stay in that. As well.
Yeah.
You should
Yeah.
always be asked. Always want to challenge your faith and grow your
Yeah.
faith. Put it to the
And I'm very thankful for people like y'all in the church. I mean, you guys have been around since like
creation.
I mean, like even
Me and Moses, me and Noah, I mean, we talk, bro. Like, they say Methuselah, so I gotta be.
but all those middle school and high school years were extremely formative. And I think one of the biggest parts too that I am so thankful for is y'all created the space where it wasn't like you were trying to get us to do something. You let us have our own accountability of seeking the Lord and of leading the way and doing that ourselves. And I'm very thankful for y'all and all that you've taught me and the prayers over these years.
Yes, sir.
And the last sermon I gave was on legacy, and it just kind of plays into that for me of like really myself as I think of my father who recently passed, and I just think of the future and like my story. I mean, I come from a lineage of pastors, but really most importantly, what God wants to do with my life.
Yep.
I think back to how thankful I am from y'all and the people who went before me and pray for me, and I just want to be a part of that. I want to be a part of that story of God and contribute in any way that God gives me the ability to. You know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So,
That's what it's all about. And I wanted to touch on that just briefly.
Mm-hmm.
Just like walking through that change, losing your dad.
Mm-hmm.
Can we talk about it? Just
we can
for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, so the last time you were here on the show, that was not the case.
Yeah, it's right before.
Yeah, and so we walked through that season now. How was it? Like, the dark times, the frustrating times, the questioning times. Like, can you walk us through a little bit of that? The wrestling of okay, why did this happen? You know.
So a lot has happened since then, and a lot still continues to happen. But I guess the first thing I'd really want to say is like the biggest thing to understand about grief is that grief doesn't go away. Grief stays with you merely rather than grief just escaping you. You just grow around it.
Yeah.
It stays with you for the rest of your life. And you grow around it. And I preached at All School, which is an event at Tribeca where it's like the whole school comes together for a worship night. And I love it because our chapels are only like 50 minutes long, so that it's limited. But these ones, like, we have more space.
Okay.
But I preached at the time on Ecclesiastes, and really, that's awesome. It's a good book. But pretty much one of the main things I was getting to at that period of me and my process of grief was just like, when people ask you the question, like, how are you doing?
Right. Yeah.
Nobody knows how to answer that question, really.
No.
And it's a weird question to ask someone who's going through grief because you never really know how you're doing.
Right.
But my response, and I kind of said jokingly at that time, was, I'm just living life.
Yeah.
And the more I thought on that, and the more I said that to people, the more it really spoke to me. And I think the Lord spoke to me through that, of just living life with the Lord and taking the emotions as they come, and letting them come out, letting them happen. And I will say, even in knowing that consciously, it was really hard.
Yeah.
There were things that were really difficult, just like, and working through was just like, what emotions do I even have right now? Like,
what is
I don't even know.
I don't even know what this. How do I label it? Yeah.
And there was some rough parts of that process in the way of, I think there was a switch in my brain at one point that was kind of like, not even knowing how to process, but there was this temptation of just like, man, I'm just gonna do what I want.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care,
Yeah.
you know? But even so, in those times where I was struggling with that, like, I knew that the Lord was with me, and I knew that He kept working on me, and it's been a process.
Yeah.
It's been a very hard process going through that, with also school, because right after my dad passed, it was at like the end of the spring semester, and it was like finals time, and like, so I never really finished finals, and that was difficult. And then right after that, I left to go to camp.
Yep.
And I'll be honest, at that point in my life, not only was all of that happening, but everything else just unleashed at the same time. So many other situations just started unleashing all at the same time. And I'm over here like, Lord, what is going on?
I'm about to be out. I'm about to be out.
Yeah, I was like, what is happening? And I felt like,
real quick, there's this TikTok where like this dude's like punching this dude, and it's like me, and then life like punching me, and the guy's on the side, hey, get up, and it's like, 1 second, I'm trying to. I'm trying.
Do you not see me trying?
So he doesn't just start something. I'm trying to. You know, so much going on. Sorry,
that's how. I mean, that's how it was at times. Like, just trying to get up. But I continue to reflect on that and all those like moments, because as they came, like, I just knew, and I knew before my dad passed, when I got some texts and some calls about him going to the hospital, and I'm driving over there, I really felt the Lord put like the word on my heart, strength. Yeah. But I'm still exploring that because I feel like I haven't fully understood like what He was trying to speak to me in that, because I thought I had strength in those situations, but now I look back and I feel like the strength that I had was not possibly the strength that God wanted me to have in some ways. Like, I think there were times where, as much as I really told myself and I pastored myself, just like, don't do these things, like, let yourself cry, bottle it up, or don't bottle it up. Like, those things just kind of happen, regardless at times. But one thing that's really helped me in this process, and just with the Lord, is being open to talk about it. People really appreciate that. Being open to all the changes that have happened, and I just let it happen to me. And I really do think the Lord is building my strength in that way now. 100%. Of as changes come and as hard memories and hard things happen, like, I've been able to just trust the Lord. Yeah. And that was my strength through all of that. And I could speak to that and so much more about that whole situation, because I also preached about it again the next All School, kind of in a different way, of like the legacy and stuff, and what that means and what that's important, or why that's important for our lives. But
the legacy is also history as well.
Yes. But my father, he wasn't a perfect man. No man really was, except for Christ. But there was a lot of things in his life that were very, not right. But I will say that that doesn't corrupt any memory I have of him. I can look to those things and learn and see him as a human, that he was struggling, and like, it's sad that when people go through those things, but also at the same time, like, I'm just thankful that the Lord used him in certain ways with me, and the Lord speaks to me in his shortcomings as well.
Yeah.
So how do I live out that legacy going forward?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot to that.
There's a lot.
Yeah. I would say your dad always made it a point to always find me at church.
Yeah.
To always like either give me accolades, give me encouragement, give me a joke, and you do that. So like it's kind of like
thanks, man. Hopefully, I could be the wolf to St. Francis.
You got the hair. So.
Thanks, bro.
It looks good though. I love it. I do tell I affirm that your hair looks really good.
Thanks, man.
You got wolf hair. It's fine. No, I thank you for sharing that, man.
Yeah,
I think it's going to help someone, whether current, in the future. Like, there's no timeline on what God can do.
Yeah.
And when he can do it. So, man, if that is the story that you are walking through, like, man, I'm trying to deal with loss, whether it's you've lost a family member, a physical loss, or, man, you've lost a career, you've lost something that was valuable to you.
Yeah.
Understanding the history of the God we serve, he will restore you.
Yeah.
He will restore all those things that you lost. He's done it for me, man. And trust me when I tell you, I have wasted years, man. But God has restored so many things to me, and he's not done. That's the exciting thing.
Yeah.
He's not done, you know? And so just knowing that, understanding that, these are the things that give us hope.
Yeah.
You know, like the word tells us, I come to give you a hope and a future. Understanding that, man, there's going to be tough times and tough moments.
Yeah.
And we all know this life is temporary, but it still hurts.
Yeah. I was going to say that you can know something, but then experiencing it is totally different. Don't give yourself grace. Don't beat yourself up for whatever. What you knew was going to happens, and you're not handling it well. Give yourself grace.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love what you said, is being in a position to say, you know what, I'm going to let these emotions happen.
Yeah.
I'm going to cry when I need to cry.
Feel it.
You know, I'm going to feel happy, remembering them when I need to feel happy, and letting all of that happen naturally. Yeah. Because you're not going to forget them.
Yeah, and let it happen with the Lord.
Yeah.
Like, it's different.
Walk you through it.
It's different when you try to do it by yourself rather than like, Lord, like, I'm really feeling this right now. That simple statement is like powerful.
Yes. And just being able to say, there's been plenty of times in prayer where I've said, this sucks.
Yeah.
This sucks. I don't want to be here. I don't want to walk through this, but I know you're with me.
Yeah. I cuss in prayer all the time.
Whoa. That's what you gotta do.
You heard it here first, people. Nobody has heard before. So.
There are no new words to him. No new words to him. Man. Yeah, but man, if you're walking through that season of, man, I am struggling with where do I go from here? Whatever you're walking through, whatever grief, whatever challenge, whatever situation, our God is consistent. Time and time again, story and story again, year after year, decade after decade, century after century, right? God is consistent. He will show up for you. All he asks is that you come seek him.
Yeah.
When you seek me, you will find me, right? And so that's what we're going to leave you with. If you seek him, you will find him, because he's going to give you hope. He's going to give you joy. He's going to give you peace. He's going to give you guidance. All of those things come from the Father, because he's a good Father, and he is there for us all the time. And we are testaments of that. And what you don't know about our God is the thing that the enemy wants to keep from you. Like, he doesn't want you to know that God is patient, that he is kind, that he is forgiving, that he is long-suffering, right? Like,
he's understanding.
He's understanding. And you see all of that when you start to examine the history with him, right? But if you don't understand the history of our God and what he's done and how he operates, the enemy will try his best to keep you blinded to that.
Yeah.
And in that, then he can beat up on you.
Yeah.
He can, like, man, you suck anyway. I don't
Yeah.
know why you even trying. Look, see, you messed up again. Or see, I thought God had your back. Why did you lose that job? I thought God was going to heal them. Why did they pass away?
Yeah.
But understanding who God is, how He can restore, and how He can take broken things and put them together and make them amazing.
Yeah.
Right? Like, so all of those things you gotta get within your heart. You gotta get that understanding. And as we always say, you gotta have that community.
Yeah.
You gotta have that community. I don't think you walk through what you walk through without community.
Yeah.
Right? And I know I haven't been restored without community. I know Blake isn't where he is without community. And I think if you go back and listen to all the other stories that have come, all of them have been delivered by being in community.
Yeah.
And so if you need that sharpening, if you need that encouraging, you're going to find it in community. The community of believers that are pointed to the Father and will point you to the Father on your good days and your bad days. So that's all I got, man. You have anything you want to add, Blake?
I just had this thought. Like, don't let the history of God separate, because God and the church, they go together.
Mm-hmm.
But I think historically people want to separate the two, and that shouldn't be happening. So just be encouraged. The church is full of people as well that are broken.
Yes.
We all need work. We all need help. So when you're finding community, if you're searching for that perfect community, it's perfect.
Yeah.
But just know that God is in it and trust that.
Yeah.
And as you trust that, whatever church you land at, doesn't matter whatever denomination it is, trust God.
Yeah.
Whatever you're looking like.
Amen. Amen, bro. Do you have anything, sir?
I'd say, as Christians, but as we are tied into the story of God, we get to be a part of something that is way bigger than ourselves, something that is huge, something that is legendary, and has and spans across all of time. And I think that is something that is beautiful. And we have to remember that, like, we're not just part of a church, we're not just part of a community, but we're part of something that is way bigger than ourselves. And it's a beautiful way for me to think of it that way.
Yeah, that is good. That is good.
So if you're in the Nashville area, you're looking for a good school, Trebek and all there.
I'm there.
It's all the advertisement for it set up. Yeah,
we'll put a link in there.
Admissions number, like, no.
Make sure we get that tip.
Correct, exactly. Tell Trebek, hey, listen, like, promo, so we have t-shirts, we have merch.
We need our merch. We need our merch money. Well, this has been great, man.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. I hope it has blessed you guys tremendously.
Bro.
It has blessed me. It has stirred me. It has reminded me of some things that I needed to remember.
Yes.
In the season I'm walking. So we love y'all. We will see you on the next episode. Peace out.